My name is Hannah Collins. I'm 29 years old and I work as an accounts payable clerk. Yesterday, I realized my parents had been quietly editing my life like a document I'd never been allowed to open. Before I tell you exactly how I ruined them, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. The office was too cold that morning, the kind of cold that stiffens your fingers even before you touch a keyboard. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and lemon disinfectant, sharp enough to sit at the back of my throat. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, not loud, just persistent, like they were breathing with me. And I pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders and stared at my screen, trying to reconcile a set of invoices that refused to align. My phone vibrated once against the desk. Not a call, a message. The vibration was small, but it went straight through my wrist and up my arm. I glanced at the screen, expecting a delivery alert or a calendar reminder. Instead, it was my bank. Unusual activity detected. Please review. I didn't move at first. I felt heat rise behind my ears, a slow flush, like embarrassment even though no one was watching. My fingers hovered over the phone. Around me, keyboards clicked. A printer coughed to life. Someone laughed quietly near the windows. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. I unlocked my phone. The screen brightness felt too harsh. The numbers too sharp. There it was. A pending change request on my savings account. Not a withdrawal. Not yet. An address update. My address changed. My stomach tightened in a way that felt familiar but misplaced, like déjà vu without the comfort. I swallowed, the air dry and cold going down. I hadn't requested that. I hadn't even logged into my account in weeks. I checked the details again, zooming in with my thumb until the text blurred and sharpened. The new address wasn't random. It was precise, carefully typed. My parents' house. I felt my shoulders tense before my mind caught up. A slow, creeping awareness pressed at the edges of my thoughts, but I pushed it away. There had to be an explanation, a clerical error, a system glitch. I locked my phone, then unlocked it again, like that might change what I was seeing. It didn't. The office suddenly felt louder, the lights buzzed brighter, and the smell of coffee turned bitter. I realized I'd been holding my breath and let it out slowly through my nose, counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. I opened the bank app again and scrolled, my thumb leaving faint smudges on the glass. The request timestamp was from early that morning, before I'd even woken up, before my alarm had gone off, before my feet had touched the cold bathroom tile in my flat. A soft thought formed, delicate and unwanted. They still have access. I sat back in my chair, the faux leather squeaking under my weight. I remembered the conversation from months ago, replaying it without asking permission. My mother's voice, light, almost cheerful. "It's just easier if we stay on there, sweetheart, in case of emergencies." I'd nodded then. I always nodded. It had felt harmless, practical, family. My phone vibrated again. This time, a text. From my mother. "Did you get the bank alert? Don't worry, it's nothing." The words sat there, neat and calm. Too calm. My fingers went cold. Nothing? I stared at the message, at the familiar contact photo, her smiling in the garden, sunlight on her face, roses behind her. The image felt suddenly staged, like a backdrop. I typed, then deleted, typed again. "What do you mean, nothing?" 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and quick, over the low murmur of the office. The chair across from me scraped as someone stood. A door opened and closed down the hall. The dots vanished. Seconds stretched. I felt them in my jaw, clenched tight enough to ache. Then my phone buzzed. "We just needed to update some paperwork." It's all under control." Under control. The phrase landed heavy in my chest. I pressed my lips together, feeling the faint dryness there, and read it again and again. We, not I, not the bank. We. My palms were damp now. I wiped them on my trousers without looking. I stood abruptly, my chair legs squealing against the floor. A few heads turned. I forced a small smile, the automatic one, and grabbed my bag. The lift ride down felt endless. The air inside was warmer, stale, smelling faintly of metal and perfume. I watched the numbers tick down, my reflection pale in the mirrored wall. I didn't think. I just moved. The bus ride was a blur of diesel fumes and overheated air. My knee bounced uncontrollably, the vinyl seat sticking slightly to the backs of my legs. Outside, the city slid past in gray and beige streaks. When by the time I reached my parents' street, my head was buzzing. Their house looked exactly the same. Neatly trimmed hedges, curtains half drawn, the familiar white door. Comforting. Ordinary. That almost made it worse. When my mother opened the door, warmth spilled out with the smell of laundry detergent and something baking. Cinnamon, maybe. It wrapped around me like an old habit. "Hannah," she said, smiling too quickly. Her eyes flicked down the street, then back to me. "You're early." I stepped inside. The hallway light was on, despite the daylight outside, casting everything in a soft yellow glow. My father's shoes were by the rack, neatly aligned. "So," I said, my voice sounding thinner than I wanted. "The bank alert." She waved a hand, already turning toward the kitchen. "I told you it's nothing. Sit down. Oh, you look tired." I followed her, each step feeling measured, deliberate. The kitchen was warm, almost stuffy. The oven hummed softly. A clock ticked loudly on the wall. My father sat at the table folding a newspaper. He didn't look up right away. I stayed standing. "What paperwork?" I asked. My mother's back stiffened just slightly. She opened a cupboard, then closed it again without taking anything out. "It's complicated," she said lightly. "You wouldn't want to worry about it." "I'm already worried," I replied. I hated how calm my voice sounded, how reasonable. "Why was my address changed?" My father finally looked up. His expression was neutral, carefully arranged. "We're just helping you," he said. "You're busy. You always say you're overwhelmed." I felt something click into place, not loudly, not dramatically, more like a soft lock sliding shut, helping. I looked from him to her. Neither met my eyes fully. My mother's smile was fixed, her lips pressed just a fraction too tight. The clock ticked. The oven hummed. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on pavement. I took out my phone, my hand steadier than I felt, and dialed my bank's number. It rang once, twice. My mother reached out, placing her hand over mine, warm and firm. "Hannah," she said softly, "let's not do this right now." The call connected. I looked at her hand on mine, at the small familiar freckle near her thumb, at the way she was smiling without warmth. I let the phone ring, and ring, and ring. The line clicked, and a recorded voice filled my ear, cheerful, measured, too bright for the tightness in my chest. I could hear my mother's breathing beside me, shallow and controlled. Yet her hand stayed on mine, not squeezing, just anchoring, like she thought pressure alone could guide my decisions. "Thank you for calling," the voice said. "Your call may be recorded." I slid my hand out from under hers. It felt damp where her skin had been. I wiped my palm against my jeans again, slower this time, and took a seat at the table without being asked. The chair was warm from my father's body heat. That made something inside me recoil. "I'm calling about an address change request on my savings account," I said when a human voice finally answered. I gave my name, my date of birth. Each word felt like a small surrender. Across the table, my father folded the newspaper again, even though it was already folded. The paper crackled, loud in the quiet kitchen. My mother leaned against the counter, arms crossed now, her smile gone, replaced by a look that felt rehearsed. The agent asked me to confirm a few details. I did. The smell of cinnamon grew heavier, almost cloying. The oven clicked off. Silence settled, thick and expectant. Yes, the agent said. I can see the request. It was submitted online. By me? I asked. There was a pause, a click of keys. It was submitted using credentials associated with the account. My throat tightened. Was there a second user? Another pause, longer this time. Yes, she said carefully. There is an authorized contact listed. My mother inhaled sharply. It was barely audible, but I heard it. My father's jaw set. And who is that? I asked, though the answer was already forming, heavy and undeniable. She gave my mother's name. I closed my eyes. The kitchen light pressed warm against my lids. When I opened them again, and my mother was watching me closely, her head tilted, as if assessing damage. I didn't know that was still active, my mother said quickly, to me, not the agent. We thought it had been removed. I held the phone tighter. Why was my address changed? The agent hesitated. The request included a note indicating consolidation of correspondence. Consolidation. My father cleared his throat. We were just trying to help, he said again, his voice firmer now, edged with something defensive. Mail gets lost, you move around. I've lived in the same flat for 3 years, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. And you didn't ask. My mother's eyes flicked to my father, then back to me. We didn't think it was a big deal. The agent was still on the line, a quiet presence, listening. I imagined her face, neutral, professional, detached. I wondered what she was thinking. Can you remove the authorized contact? I asked. Yes, she said. I can initiate that process now. It will require verification. Do it, I said. My mother pushed off the counter. Hannah, please, she said softly. Let's talk about this. Not now, I replied. I didn't look at her. The agent guided me through steps. Security questions, a temporary code sent to my phone. Each beep felt like a small reclaiming. My fingers shook as I typed. When it was done, the agent confirmed the change. Is there anything else I can help you with today? I hesitated. There were so many questions pressed up against my teeth, all sharp and urgent. But I swallowed them. No, I said, that's all. I ended the call. The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. The clock ticked louder now, each second landing like a tap on glass. My mother sat down across from me. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. You didn't have to do that, she said. I did, I replied. My voice felt distant to my own ears. Why were you consolidating my correspondence? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her gaze drifted to the window, where sunlight cut a bright line across the floor. There are things you don't need to worry about yet, she said finally. Like what? My father leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. The wood creaked under him. You're overreacting, he said. It's just paperwork. Paperwork that involves my money, I said, my address, my name. My mother reached out, stopping short of touching me. We've always handled these things for you, she said. You've always trusted us. The word trusted landed wrong, when it felt like an accusation disguised as nostalgia. I trusted you because I thought you'd tell me, I said, because I thought you'd ask. My father's mouth tightened. We didn't think you'd understand. That hurt more than I expected. It slid under my ribs and lodged there, quiet but sharp. I understand enough to know when something is being hidden from me, I said. My mother stood again, restless now. She paced the small length of the kitchen, her slippers whispering against the tile. You're making this into something it isn't, she said. Everything we do is for your benefit. For my benefit, I echoed. The words tasted bitter. She stopped pacing, turned to face me. You don't see the whole picture, she said. You're not meant to. The room felt warmer suddenly, the air thick. I loosened my scarf, my fingers clumsy. Hey, why? I asked quietly. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or calculation. You're sensitive, she said gently. You take things personally. I laughed once, a short, hollow sound that surprised all of us. "It is personal," I said. "It's my life." My father stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping harshly. "Enough," he said. "This conversation is going nowhere." I stood too. The kitchen seemed smaller now, the walls closer. "It's going exactly where it needs to," I said. "I'm done being managed." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Fine," she said, "if that's how you want it." The way she said fine felt like a door closing. I grabbed my bag and moved toward the hallway. The familiar smells, the detergent, the cinnamon felt suffocating now. At the door, my phone buzzed. I looked down, an email notification from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was short, "Wedding guest list. Final." I froze, my hand on the doorknob, the cool metal grounding me. Behind me, my parents were silent. I didn't open the email, not yet. The hallway felt colder than the kitchen, the tile biting through the soles of my shoes. I stood there with my hand still wrapped around the doorknob, my phone vibrating softly like it was impatient with me. The email notification sat on the screen, bright and unread, the subject line staring back as if it already knew something I didn't. Wedding guest list. Final. Behind me, nothing moved. No footsteps, no voices. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the clock leaking in from the kitchen. And I turned slowly. My parents stood side by side now, closer than they had been moments ago. My mother's arms were folded again, tight against her chest, shoulders lifted in a way that made her look smaller, more rigid. My father's hands were shoved into his pockets, his jaw working as if he were chewing on words he hadn't decided to release. "What is that?" I asked. My voice sounded strange in the hallway, flatter than I expected, like it had been pressed thin. My mother didn't answer right away. She glanced at my father, just a flick of her eyes, and something passed between them. Quick, practiced. A silent exchange I wasn't meant to understand. "It's nothing for you to worry about," she said finally, the same phrase again. Nothing. My fingers tightened around the phone. The screen had dimmed, but the words were burned into my head. Wedding, guest list, final. "Is it about Emily?" I asked. My sister's name felt heavy as it left my mouth. It always did, like a piece that never quite fit right. There was a faint smell of her perfume lingering in the house. Floral, sweet, a little sharp. She'd been here earlier, I realized. The thought landed with a quiet thud. My father exhaled through his nose. "Don't start," he said. "I'm not starting anything," I replied. "I'm asking." My mother stepped closer, her slippers whispering on the floor. The hallway light cast shadows under her eyes, lines I didn't remember being so deep. "Emily's wedding is a sensitive situation," she said carefully. "Emotions are already high." A thin thread of unease tightened in my chest. "What does that have to do with me?" She hesitated, just a fraction too long. "You and Emily, things have been strained," she said. Strained. That word always made me feel like I was being blamed for a tear someone else had made. I remembered birthdays where my calls went unanswered, messages left unread, the way she smiled too brightly at family dinners, her eyes skimming past me like I was part of the furniture. "Strained doesn't mean non-existent," I said. "She's my sister." My father shifted his weight. The floor creaked. "This isn't the time to dig into old issues." I glanced down at my phone again. The notification was still there. I could feel it like a weight in my palm. "Why would someone email me a final guest list?" I asked, "unless my name was on it, or not on it." The air felt thicker, warmer. My pulse thudded in my ears, loud enough to drown out the quiet hum of the house. My mother's lips parted. Closed. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of her sleeve, a small, nervous gesture she'd had my entire life. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," she said. Yet. The word echoed, sharp and undeniable. "So it is about me," I said softly. My father's voice hardened. This is exactly why we didn't want to involve you." "Involve me in what?" I asked. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't quite get a full breath. "My own family?" My mother reached out again, stopping just short of touching my arm. "Hannah, please," she said. "This isn't personal." I looked at her hand hovering there, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin, close enough to pull away. "Everything you've done today has been personal," I said. "You changed my bank details. You told me I wasn't meant to see the whole picture. Yeah, and now this." Her hand dropped back to her side. "We're trying to protect you," she said. "From what?" I asked. She didn't answer. The silence stretched, long and uncomfortable. I could hear a car outside, tires crunching over gravel, someone laughing faintly down the street. Normal life continuing without any regard for the way my insides were slowly rearranging themselves. I unlocked my phone. My mother inhaled sharply. "Hannah." I opened the email. The screen filled with text, small and orderly like a spreadsheet. Names listed in neat rows, families grouped together, plus ones noted in parentheses, little comments in italics. I scrolled. My heart beat faster, each thud loud and insistent. I scanned the list, my eyes moving quicker than my mind, searching for something familiar. Emily and her fiancé's names were at the top, bolded. My parents' names followed. Aunts, uncles, cousins, friends I recognized, colleagues. I scrolled further. My thumb slowed. There was a space where my name should have been, a gap that felt intentional, carefully curated. I scrolled back up, then down again, slower this time. I traced each line with my eyes, refusing to rush, as if going carefully might change what I was seeing. It didn't. My name wasn't there. I felt a strange calm settle over me, like the moment right before something breaks. My fingers went numb. The hallway lights seemed too bright, washing everything in a harsh yellow. "I'm not invited," I said. The words sounded factual, observational. My mother's shoulders sagged. "It's not like that," she said quickly. "It's just..." "Just what?" I asked. My father looked away, his gaze fixing on a spot near the ceiling. Emily didn't want any distractions." "Distractions?" I laughed quietly, the sound brittle. "I'm a distraction now?" "She's under a lot of stress," my mother said. "This is her day." "And I ruin it by existing?" I asked. "No," she said too fast. "By reacting." That landed harder than anything else. "Reacting to what?" I asked. "Being excluded? Lied to? Managed behind my back?" My mother's eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. They just sat there, shining, making her look wounded and resolute all at once. "You have a way of making things about you," she said softly. I stared at her, really stared, at the woman who had braided my hair for school, who knew exactly how I liked my tea, who could read my moods with a glance. The words felt foreign coming from her mouth, like they'd been borrowed from someone else. "Oh, I learned that from you," I said. My father stepped forward. "Enough," he said again. "This decision has been made." Decision. By whom? And the bank? I asked suddenly. The address change. Was that part of this decision too? Neither of them answered. I felt something shift then, deep and irreversible. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. A clarity that slid into place with unsettling ease. "You're organizing things without me," I said slowly. "My money, my family, my place." My mother's silence was confirmation enough. "I need you to leave," my father said. His voice was firm now, final. "This conversation is over." I nodded. My movements felt deliberate, controlled, like I was operating someone else's body. I slipped my phone into my bag, my hand steady despite the way my heart was racing. At the door, I paused. "Then when were you going to tell me?" I asked, without turning around. My mother didn't answer. I opened the door. Cool air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp pavement and distant exhaust. It felt clean compared to the warmth behind me. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an email. It was a text from Emily. "Please don't come to the wedding." I stood there on the doorstep, the door still open behind me, the house silent, and read the message again and again until the words stopped making sense, and all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing. The street was quiet, almost eerily so. The faint rustle of leaves in the wind sounded too loud against the silence of my thoughts. I felt the chill seep through my coat, but it didn't matter. Nothing could warm the tight knot forming in my chest. My phone buzzed again, but this time I didn't look. I couldn't. I wasn't ready for anything more. I leaned against the brick wall of my parents' house, feeling the rough texture under my palms. It scratched lightly through my gloves, a small grounding sensation in a world that suddenly felt slippery. My breaths came uneven, shallow, each one catching somewhere between panic and disbelief. "Emily, please don't come to the wedding." I read it again, letting the words curl around my skull like smoke. My sister, the person I had shared secrets with, sleepovers, whispered dreams, was asking me to stay away. I closed my eyes, trying to picture her face, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, the light in her eyes when she laughed. But the image was tainted now, blurred with betrayal. I could still feel the warmth of the kitchen behind me, on the smell of cinnamon, of laundry detergent, even my mother's faint perfume. It clung to me like a memory I couldn't shake. The air outside was colder now, damp with mist, and I shivered, realizing I'd been standing there longer than I thought. My fingers trembled as I finally unlocked the phone. I typed a single word: "Why?" It stayed on the screen unsent. I couldn't press send. I didn't want her words to hit her phone, not yet. The thought of her reading my hurt, knowing I had been cut out of something so monumental, made my throat tight. I stuffed the phone back into my bag and started walking, my shoes clattering against the wet pavement. The neighborhood was mostly empty, the usual morning bustle delayed, replaced with that uneasy quiet that makes your mind replay every small interaction, every glance, every word, every carefully arranged silence at the kitchen table. Carefully arranged silence. I stopped at the corner and stared down the street. The sun was beginning to climb, thin and pale, but the clouds pressed down like a weight. My breath fogged in front of me. I realized I hadn't noticed the temperature dropping. I hadn't noticed anything except the email and the text. I thought about my parents' faces, my mother's calm, rehearsed smile, my father's set jaw, the way they mirrored each other like trained actors in a play I wasn't allowed to be in. I could almost see the thought process behind it, the planning, the quiet discussions I hadn't been invited to. It made my stomach twist. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to throw the phone against the wall. But my body felt too heavy, my limbs too sluggish. Instead, I walked, to each step deliberate, my heels echoing off the damp pavement. I thought about all the times Emily had called me sensitive or dramatic when I reacted to things I couldn't control. I had smiled through those accusations, reassured her, told her I understood. But this felt bigger than anything I had ever experienced. The text buzzed again in my bag. My phone. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling. A second message. "Hannah, trust me. It's better if you stay home. Trust me." The words landed like a slap. Not in anger, not in accusation, but in disbelief. Betrayal wore many faces, and this was one of them. Casual, familiar, impossible to argue against because it was framed as concern. I could almost hear Emily's voice, soft and persuasive, the same one that had convinced me to lend her my notes for finals, to babysit her dog at the last minute, to pick up her mail when she was away. That voice now weaponized. I sank down onto the curb, my bag resting heavily on my lap. My coat smelled faintly of home, cinnamon and detergent mixed with the faint musk of my own perfume from earlier. It made me want to vomit and cry at the same time. I hugged my knees, feeling the cold seep through my tights, into my skin. I could hear the distant hum of traffic, the squawk of a bird somewhere, the faint rattle of a window shutter. Each sound was painfully ordinary, indifferent to the upheaval inside me. I thought about the wedding, the flowers, the guests, the vows. My place in all of it had been decided without me. I had not been allowed to react, to speak, to exist in that moment. My own sister had drawn the line, and my parents had silently approved it. When a dull ache started at the base of my skull and spread down my neck, my fingers clenched around my knees. I had to get up, move, think, anything to stop the spiral of thoughts. I thought about the first betrayal, the bank alert, the unauthorized change, the calm, rehearsed words of my parents. That had been the first crack. And now this. 2 betrayals, small and precise, layered over each other like sheets of glass. Sharp edges, cold to touch, waiting to cut if I moved wrong. I stared at the street, at the pale morning sky. And then I realized something. They had been planning this without me for months, maybe longer. Every small decision, every gentle excuse, they had shaped my life, my access, my place in their family narrative without ever telling me. My stomach churned. My hands were shaking. I hugged my knees tighter. A single thought repeated, slow and deliberate, cold in its clarity. They don't want me there. Not for the wedding. Not for anything important. I pulled my phone out again. The screen lit up my face. Emily's messages stared at me. Please don't come. I wanted to respond. I wanted to demand answers, to scream into her face through the glow of the screen, but my fingers hovered over the keyboard, frozen. I looked down the street, then back at my parents' house. The door was closed now, the warmth and smells trapped inside. My family, untouchable, perfectly arranged, had decided I wasn't worthy of a moment that was supposed to celebrate love. I pressed the phone to my chest, my heart hammering against it. Then it buzzed again. A third message. This one had no subject, no pretext. Just 3 words that made my stomach drop like stones into deep water. Don't make an appearance. I looked up at the house one last time. The window blinds were down now, hiding everything inside, and I realized, with a clarity that made the world feel suddenly narrow and cold, they had excluded me entirely, and yet nobody had told me directly. I sat there on the curb, the mist curling around my shoes, the cold biting through my coat, the phone warm and heavy in my hand, and I understood something I could never unlearn. I had been erased. My hands went numb. My knees ached. My throat burned. But worst of all, I felt a terrifying calm settle over me, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm you can't see but know is coming. I had no plan, no allies, only the creeping certainty that my place in my family had been stolen. And then my phone buzzed one last time. It wasn't from Emily. It was from my mother. The message was short. We need to talk, now. I froze. A chill ran down my spine, deeper than the morning air, colder than the brick wall behind me. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I only stared at the screen and waited. I sat on the curb for what felt like hours, though the mist thickened around me and the sun climbed higher in the sky. My fingers gripped the phone like it was a lifeline, the cold metal pressing against my palm, warming slightly as my pulse thudded in rhythm with the tiny vibrations of the notification light. We need to talk. Now. The words were simple, direct, and yet they carried a weight so heavy it made my chest ache. I wanted to throw the phone, to smash it against the pavement, and to erase the message and with it every last trace of the control they'd exercised over my life. But I couldn't. Something in me, a quiet, stubborn part I barely recognized, made me stay seated, holding it, waiting. I replayed the morning in my mind over and over. The bank alert, the hidden authorized contact, the rehearsed words, the sighs, the small excuses, the way my mother's hand had hovered over mine before retreating, as if offering comfort while confirming her authority, and Emily's text, the way my sister had framed exclusion as concern, trust, Protection. Protection. The word burned. I wrapped my arms around my knees and rested my forehead against them, trying to steady my breathing. The mist settled thick around my ankles, soaking my shoes. A neighbor's car drove past slowly, tires hissing over wet pavement. And their windows were dark, and inside a family probably shared breakfast, oblivious to my unraveling. My phone buzzed again. I froze. Not with hope, not with fear exactly. Something sharper, a cold, precise anticipation. I glanced at the screen. "Hannah, come inside, please." No warmth, no explanation, just a command dressed up as a plea. My fingers hovered over the screen, trembling. My heart beat unevenly, caught somewhere between dread and disbelief. I didn't want to go inside. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream at someone who would listen, someone who could validate the earthquake happening in my chest. But there was no one. Just them. Just my parents. Just Emily. Just the careful, quiet, suffocating betrayal. I stood finally, brushing my hands against the wet fabric of my coat. The cold air bit into my cheeks, making them sting, and I considered turning away, walking down the street and never looking back. But the pull, the curiosity, the need to understand, was stronger. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the porch. The door loomed before me, familiar yet alien. I pressed my hand against the wood, feeling the grooves and scratches I had known since childhood. I hesitated. "Mom?" I called softly, my voice catching. No answer. I opened the door slowly. The smell hit me immediately. Cinnamon, detergent, and something else. Something metallic, almost like iron. Faint, lingering. My stomach twisted. The hallway was empty. Quiet. The blinds were drawn. The light was low, spilling in soft, muted strips across the wooden floor. The house felt different. Larger, colder, somehow sharper. I stepped further in, my shoes squeaking faintly on the polished surface. Each step echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the walls and making me hyper-aware of every creak, every small sound. "Mom?" I called again, quieter this time. A voice came from the kitchen, my mother's, soft, controlled, but not warm. "In here." I moved toward the kitchen. The familiar hum of the refrigerator was louder than usual. The oven was off, no smell of cinnamon baking now, just the faint scent of something cleaned too thoroughly. The air smelled sterile. She was there, leaning lightly against the counter. Her eyes were fixed on me, but they weren't the mother I remembered. They were sharper, calculating, assessing. "Sit," she said. I stayed standing. She sighed, faint, almost inaudible. "Hannah, please, sit." I sank onto the kitchen chair, the wood cold under my fingers. My back was stiff, my legs tense. I kept my bag on my lap, one finger's gripping the strap like a lifeline. My mother folded her hands in front of her, the same motion she had used for as long as I could remember when she wanted me to obey without asking questions. She took a deep breath. "Hannah, I know this has been difficult," she began, carefully choosing her words. "But you have to understand something." I blinked, waiting. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, filled only with the faint ticking of the clock and the hum of the fridge. "Understand what?" I asked, voice low. "That Emily's wedding, it isn't for you," she said. Her words were measured, deliberate, almost clinical. I felt my chest tighten, my throat burned. "Not for me? What does that mean?" Her eyes softened slightly, but it felt like an act. "It's complicated. We didn't want to hurt you, but you also need to see the bigger picture. Some things, some decisions, aren't yours to be involved in." My hands tightened around my bag. "Not mine to be involved in." My voice rose, controlled but trembling. "I'm Emily's sister. This is her day. I'm part of her life." She shook her head. "It's not about being part of her life, Hannah. It's about keeping everything in order." In order. That phrase lodged somewhere deep, cold and immovable. My stomach turned. I felt dizzy, my pulse hammering in my ears. And the bank? I asked suddenly, all the suppressed panic and confusion pressing forward. The address change? The control over my account? That was in order too? She looked down, her lips pressing together. Her hands trembled slightly. She lifted her gaze, but the softness was gone. It was for your protection, she said. Our protection. I laughed quietly, a short, hollow sound that seemed to bounce off the walls. Protection? I repeated. You call hiding my place on a wedding guest list, changing my bank details, keeping me in the dark. Protection. She didn't answer. The silence stretched, unbearable. I could feel the weight of it pressing on my lungs, on my chest. Then a faint sound from the hall made me freeze. A door opening, closing. A step. Someone approaching. Emily. Her shadow fell across the floor. My chest tightened. I could feel her presence before I saw her fully, and when I did, I froze. She didn't smile, not even a little. Her eyes were calm, but empty in a way that made my stomach drop. She stopped in the doorway, looked at me, and smiled. A slow, deliberate, chilling smile. I felt my pulse hammer. My hands gripped the edge of the chair. My bag dug into my lap. I realized, with sudden, icy clarity, that this wasn't just about a wedding. It was about control, and I was trapped in the middle of it. Her smile widened, just a fraction, small but knowing. "Hi, Hannah," she said softly, and in that moment, I understood. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared, had only just begun. The smile didn't reach Emily's eyes. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of smile that feels rehearsed, measured, almost surgical. My stomach churned violently. My hands dug into my bag so hard the strap bit into my palms. "Hi, Hannah," she said again, softer this time, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. I stayed seated, frozen. My mind raced, leaping from one thought to another, trying to find a foothold. Why? Why now? Why me? And her heels clicked lightly against the wooden floor as she stepped closer, slow and precise. Each step made my heart pound faster. The warm air from inside the kitchen seemed to press against my skin, contrasting sharply with the cold bite of the morning outside. "Emily, what is this?" My voice shook, quiet but sharp. Why am I not on the guest list?" She tilted her head, hair brushing her shoulders. The faint scent of her perfume, sweet, floral, was almost suffocating now, clinging to the space between us. "It's complicated," she said. I laughed quietly, bitterly. "Complicated? That's the word we're using now? You sent me a text telling me not to come. You excluded me completely, and that's complicated?" She paused, and the room seemed to grow heavier. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, and even the faint creak of the floorboards all amplified. She finally spoke, her voice low, calm, and controlled. "You've always been sensitive, Hannah, easily upset." The words hit me like ice water. My body stiffened. I could feel my jaw tightening, my hands shaking. "Sensitive?" I repeated, disbelief clawing at me. "Sensitive? I'm your sister. I'm part of your life. You're supposed to include me, not erase me." Emily's smile didn't falter. "Sometimes people need space," she said lightly. "You're emotional, and Mom and Dad wanted to manage things for everyone's comfort. Manage. Control." The words lodged in my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone, the chair, anything. But I didn't. My mouth went dry. My pulse hammered. "You mean you all conspired to exclude me?" I said slowly, each word deliberate. "The bank, so the wedding, everything. It's been planned." Emily's eyes flicked toward my mother, who stood behind me, arms folded, lips pressed tightly together. Her mother's calm presence, usually comforting, now felt like part of the machinery, complicit. Emily glanced back at me, a faint smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Planned isn't the right word. Protected. Considered. I shook my head, disbelief growing into something colder, sharper. Protected? You're protecting me from what? Being part of my own sister's wedding? Being in my own life? The silence that followed was thick, unbearable. My mind raced. My chest felt tight. I could hear my own heartbeat in the quiet kitchen. The air smelled faintly of detergent, almost sterile now, stripping away any comfort that had existed moments before. Then Emily leaned slightly closer, her smile tightening, almost cruel. You don't understand yet, but you will. I flinched, the words striking deeper than anything she could have said. A tremor ran down my arms. My stomach felt hollow, as if all the air had been pulled from it. I gripped my bag tighter, nails digging into the fabric. What do you mean I'll understand? I asked, my voice low, strained. All of this. You can't just decide I don't exist in these moments. She shrugged, a faint tilt of her shoulders, casual and unnerving. Sometimes family needs boundaries. You'll see. I swallowed hard. My pulse raced so fast it was almost painful. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to escape, to get as far from this house and this betrayal as possible. But part of me couldn't move. Something anchored me in place. My mother stepped forward, finally breaking her silence. Hannah. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but it carried the same authority I had seen in the kitchen that morning, the same quiet control. We're doing what's best. I laughed quietly, bitter, shaking my head. What's best? You mean what's best for you, for Emily, for yourselves? My mother's eyes flicked to Emily, who still stood there, arms crossed, the perfect image of calm. Then she looked back at me. Sometimes, yes, she admitted softly, we make choices you don't understand. I felt something crack inside me. Not anger, not grief, not yet. Something colder. The edges of disbelief had sharpened into clarity. They've been managing my life without me. The thought cut deep. And now it wasn't just about the wedding, or the bank, or even Emily. It was every small decision, every quiet manipulation. Knew everything that had been for my protection, but had always been for their comfort. I realized with a sick, tight twist in my stomach that the full extent of this betrayal was only beginning to surface. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted answers. But all I could do was sit, frozen, as Emily's smile stretched just a fraction wider. Then she stepped closer and whispered, almost casually, right next to my ear, "You're not supposed to ruin this." The words landed like ice. My fingers tightened around my bag strap until it dug into my palms. My chest constricted, my breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only stare, the weight of betrayal pressing in from every direction. And then I understood. This wasn't just exclusion. It was control, and I was trapped in the middle of it. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like a drum, sharp and relentless. My palms were slick against the strap of my bag, knuckles white. The air in the kitchen pressed down, heavy, as if it knew the storm gathering inside me. My breathing was shallow, uneven, caught somewhere between panic and disbelief. Emily stood there, the faint smirk still tugging at her lips, the calculated calm in her eyes, a silent weapon. My mother remained behind me, arms folded, her face unreadable but unmistakably complicit. My father had retreated into the living room, silent, distant, but present. I don't understand, I whispered. My voice sounded alien to me, thin, trembling. How can you, all of you, decide my place in my own family? Emily tilted her head, the light catching on her cheekbone. It's not about you, Hannah. It's about what works, what keeps everything in order. I shook my head, trying to process the words. In order? I repeated, disbelief gnawing at me. You mean your comfort, Your control. This isn't order, it's erasure." My mother's lips pressed together, her eyes flicking to Emily. Then she met mine, her gaze softening, but not enough to feel comforting. "We were protecting everyone, Hannah, you included." "Protecting me?" I laughed, bitter and hollow. "By excluding me? By sending texts telling me not to attend? By changing my bank information without telling me? How is that protecting me?" Emily shrugged, casual, almost bored. "Sometimes people react badly. Emotions get messy. It's easier this way." "Easier for whom?" I demanded. "You, Mom, Dad, Emily?" She stepped closer, calm, deliberate. Her perfume, a sweet and faintly cloying, pressed against me. The edges of my vision blurred as adrenaline surged. "For the family," she said softly, almost a whisper. "Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. You'll understand." I couldn't speak. I wanted to, but words tangled in my throat. My chest burned. My hands shook. My mind raced through every memory, every small manipulation, every excuse I had ever swallowed, every moment I had trusted them, every "we're just helping," and "you don't need to worry." I remembered the bank alert, the hidden, authorized contact, the careful way my mother had hovered over my hands but never let me act. And now this. Emily's wedding, my name deliberately erased, my sister and parents controlling not just my presence, but my perception of myself. They've been orchestrating my life without me. And the realization hit harder than I expected. My stomach churned. My fingers dug into my bag strap until they hurt. My knees trembled. And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the hurt, a slow, simmering clarity began to form. I wasn't supposed to see it. I wasn't supposed to notice. I wasn't supposed to react, but I had. And now, knowing, the world felt smaller, tighter, more confined. My place had been stolen in layers, quietly, carefully, with rehearsed words and controlled gestures. And yet, here I was, still breathing, still aware, still alive. Emily's eyes were on me, cool, calculating. She smiled again, just a fraction wider. "You need to calm down," she said softly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Harder for whom?" I asked. My voice shook now, more from disbelief than fear. "Wanda, you've made it impossible for me to be part of this family without your permission. Impossible to exist without being managed." My mother sighed, a soft, almost imperceptible exhale. "We love you, Hannah. That's why we're doing this. You just don't see it yet." Love? The word was bitter in my mouth. Love that controls, that erases, that dictates. Love that hides behind texts, emails, and whispered instructions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But my body refused to move. My hands, my legs, my chest, they all felt locked in place, paralyzed by the sheer weight of realization. I could hear the faint hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock. Normal life carried on, indifferent to the psychological trap I had stepped into. Emily's smile tightened. "You're not supposed to ruin this," she repeated, her voice softer, but the threat behind it unmistakable. And then she stepped back slightly, just enough to give herself space, to assert control, to reinforce her invisible authority over the room and over me. I stared at her, my hands trembling, my chest heaving. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, to reclaim the air that felt like it had been stolen from me. But I couldn't move, not yet. Because beneath the fear, beneath the betrayal, beneath the hurt, a new thought began to crystallize. I'm not powerless. It was faint, fragile, but real. And that made everything more terrifying. Because now I knew the truth, and knowing the truth meant I couldn't go back to pretending everything was normal. I couldn't go back to being invisible. And they knew it. The room seemed to shrink, the air thicker, heavier, on as if it were pressing down on me, testing me. Emily's eyes glinted, almost triumphant, almost predatory. My parents' calm, measured expressions confirmed it. They had expected me to fold, to stay silent, to accept their carefully constructed reality. But I hadn't, and that realization, cold and precise, sank into my bones. I could feel every heartbeat in my chest, loud and insistent, echoing in the quiet kitchen. The air felt thick, heavy, almost viscous, pressing against my skin as if trying to hold me in place. My hands trembled, knuckles white as they gripped my bag strap, my nails biting into the fabric. I couldn't think clearly. My thoughts were shards, sharp and scattered. But one thing was certain. I had to respond. Emily's eyes were on me, cold, deliberate, studying me the way a predator studies prey. My mother's arms were still folded, her face carefully neutral. My father had retreated into the living room, silent, distant, observing without intervening. All three of them were aligned, a perfect, impenetrable wall. "You're all unbelievable," I said finally, voice low, trembling, but cutting through the tension like a blade. "I can't believe you'd orchestrate my life like this. My bank, my home, my sister's wedding, all of it, without telling me a thing." Emily tilted her head slightly, the faintest smirk tugging at her lips. "You're overreacting," she said smoothly. "You always do. That's why this is necessary." Necessary. I swallowed hard, the words bitter on my tongue. Necessary? You mean convenient for you, safe for you, comfortable for you. I let the words hang, heavy, pressing against the walls of the kitchen, against their calm, rehearsed faces. My mother's lips pressed together, her eyes flicking to Emily, then back to me. "We were protecting you," she said again, voice soft, measured. "You just don't see it yet." "Protecting me," I repeated, voice rising, "by erasing me from my sister's life, by deciding where I belong without asking me? That's not protection, that's control." Emily's smile widened, deliberate, chilling. "Sometimes family has to make decisions for the greater good," she said softly, almost coaxing. "You're too emotional. You'd make it messy." I felt the blood drain from my face, then rush back, hot and furious. My chest tightened, my pulse hammering, my hands clenched into fists in my lap, nails digging painfully into my palms. "Messy?" I repeated. "I'm your sister. And you think my presence is messy? You think my life, my choices, my very existence is something to be managed?" My mother's eyes flicked down briefly, then back to mine. "You just don't understand how complicated this is," she said softly, almost pleading. "You can't see the bigger picture yet." The bigger picture. I laughed, quiet, brittle, almost hysterical. "The bigger picture? You've been erasing me from it?" My voice broke slightly, raw with frustration and disbelief. "Everything, my bank, my address, Emily's wedding, it's all been arranged without me. How is that anything but erasure?" Emily stepped closer, the faint scent of her perfume pressing against me, sweet and suffocating. Her eyes glinted with satisfaction, calm, deliberate. "You're not supposed to ruin this," she whispered again, the words sliding under my skin, cold and precise. I flinched, my stomach twisting. When the tension in the room was unbearable, pressing against me from every direction, I could feel the quiet choreography of their actions, the subtle cues, the rehearsed expressions, the controlled phrases, every word, every movement designed to manipulate me, to keep me in line. And now I realized, fully, terrifyingly, that I had been living inside their control for years. I had thought I was making my own choices, thought I had autonomy, but every boundary I had tried to set, every opinion I had voiced, had been quietly overridden, managed, redirected. Every small independence had been preempted, carefully orchestrated. And Emily's smile, the deliberate, chilling calm on her face, was proof of it. I felt something shift inside me, a slow, simmering clarity, sharp and cold. I wasn't supposed to see this. I wasn't supposed to recognize it. I wasn't supposed to react, but I had. And now I understood the stakes. I could sit here, frozen, paralyzed by the orchestration of my family. I could let them continue to erase me, control me, dictate my place in every aspect of my life. Or I could act. The thought was terrifying. My pulse raced, my stomach lurched, my hands shook. But beneath the fear, beneath the betrayal, beneath the layers of hurt, I felt something new. Power. Not the reckless, angry kind, but the quiet, deliberate kind that grows from clarity, from knowing the truth. I took a deep breath. The air in the kitchen was thick, warm, faintly metallic. My bag felt heavy in my lap, a tangible weight I could anchor myself to. My legs ached from sitting tensely, my throat burned. But I was awake now, fully awake, and they knew it. Emily's eyes narrowed slightly, said the faint smirk fading, replaced with a flicker of uncertainty. My mother's calm mask trembled ever so slightly. Even my father, silent in the living room, shifted. They had expected me to fold, to accept their careful narrative, to remain obedient and unaware. But I hadn't. I was trembling, yes. Afraid, yes. But I was awake. And knowing the truth meant there was no going back. I looked at Emily. Her lips parted slightly, a quiet, calculated attempt to regain composure. But the balance had shifted. I could feel it. The room felt smaller, tighter, oppressive. But in that suffocating closeness, I realized something terrifyingly empowering. I could no longer be controlled. I could no longer be erased. And that made the next move mine.